All right, let me get this straight. Apple redesigns the Mac Mini for the first time in 14 years. They put I/O on the front, they give us Thunderbolt 5 as an option, they make it radically compact, which fully takes advantage of the thermal and power efficiency of these new ARM chips, and the biggest complaint isn't that it costs $200 to go from 16 gigs to 24 gigs of RAM. The biggest complaint is that the power button is on the bottom. All right, let's talk about it. I'll be honest, the first time I saw this pop up as a meme, I thought it was funny. I figured, yes, they put the power button on the bottom the same way that they put the charge port on the bottom of the mouse. Except when you have to charge the mouse, you can't use it, and you only have to press the power button once to turn the computer on, and technically you don't even have to press it to turn the computer off. Oh man, let me explain here in this video why, if you're smart, you really won't have to press the power button at all with these machines. Let's dive in. So when it comes to the Mac Mini and the way people want to use it, a lot of people are going to use this thing sitting on the desk. And this picture perfectly illustrates how to power it on. Is it the most elegant way? No. I mean, yeah, you got to tip the computer a little bit to power it on, but you're going to be basically doing that once and using the computer from that point forward. Now, if you're the kind of person that shuts your computer off at the end of the day, then yes, you're probably going to have to lift the computer, press the button every single time you sit down at the desk because you shut the computer off when you get up and leave. That is a habit that I know a lot of people have because they come from a desktop that is, let's say, a work computer, like a ThinkStation or whatever you call the Lenovo ones. And so it makes sense that the people who are worried about power consumption are going to be turning their computer on every single time because they're in the habit of turning it off when they're done using it. But let me break something down for you on that front, the power consumption front. I went and pulled up a bunch of different computers that were kind of in this same form factor like the Lenovo Idea Center, and those, when at idle, just meaning you're letting them sit there, they're not doing anything, those draw an average, I just kind of averaged them together, of about 20 watts at idle. And at full load, when you're just hitting it with the heaviest workload you possibly could, the average maximum that they would be drawing is between 240 to 260 watts. So it's a pretty wide range, but obviously if it's still drawing a consistent 20 watts when it's doing nothing, that's a lot for what I would consider the average idle usage, especially when we start looking at what Apple draws for the usage of their computers at idle. What does the new Mac Mini draw? Well, we actually don't know because we don't have the new Mac Minis in our hands yet. They're still on pre-order. But we do have what the wattage draw was for the old Mac Minis. And so I looked at the most powerful of the old Mac Minis, the M2 Pro, which, keep in mind, was using the old Intel Mac Mini power supply. Hey, early morning editor Garrett here. So today, when this video is coming out, all of the reviews, I assume the embargo lifted, so all of the reviews for the Mac Mini have dropped, and I haven't seen any of them yet, but I'm assuming they probably talk about what the power draw for these Mac Minis are, so mine is based off the information I had when I recorded it, not what has now become available. So just keep that in mind. My comparisons are based off before the Mac Mini came out, not after. I need to work on getting these videos out sooner. And at idle, they would draw 4.8 watts and occasionally run up to about 6 watts. So between 4.8 to 6 watts. That is so little. Like light bulbs pull more power than that. And then at full load, oh man, in a theoretical full blast scenario, the Mac Mini will draw up to 185 watts. For reference, my gaming desktop can draw up to 850 watts with all the components inside. This Mac Mini, even at full blast, is actually not pulling a lot of power comparative to other systems of the same performance. That's pretty cool right off the bat. So right out of the gate, when it comes to like an energy conservation concern, that really doesn't make much sense because the Mac Mini draws less power than most LED light bulbs on the market. And even with things like average web browsing, that's still not drawing a lot of power because that 185 theoretical watts that it can pull at maximum is really never going to happen. Even under video editing load, the CPU usually doesn't get maxed out, and even the GPU doesn't work too hard. It's putting it all on video encoders. The only time it's going to draw that much power is I guess if you're running a game while you also have Blender running and Handbrake running. Maybe? I don't know. Hard to say. But either way, it's not going to draw that much power on average. And when you're doing something like browsing the web, it'll draw like 10, maybe 15 watts. I mean, keep in mind, these are chips that they were putting inside of laptops. And these laptops were getting 18 plus hours of battery life. So you don't need to shut the Mac Mini off. So that right there kind of means that if it's sitting on your desk just not doing anything, you're not going to have to shut it off and then press the power button every time you use it. So there's one reason why the power button being on the bottom doesn't matter. But in my last video talking about the Mac Mini, there were a couple people in the comments who made me aware that, yeah, some people aren't going to buy these as desktop computers. They're actually looking to use them as servers, whether it be for storage, media, large language model, rendering. There's a whole lot of things you can do now with these little boxes that really make them convenient for people who just want a compact server. But the big concern was, well, if the power button's on the bottom and they're in a rack somewhere, what am I supposed to do if I lose power or something like that? Well, first off, the old Mac Mini design had the power button around the back, and if you put those into a rack system, those racks usually had some sort of little button mechanism that had an extension that reached around the back and pushed the power button in. Not the most elegant solution, but I'm sure they're going to adapt something like that to the new Mac Mini chassis, so that part's really not going to matter. But I'm also going to let you in on a little secret with my own personal server. My Time Machine backup and Plex server has been on now for 3 days straight, and on average is on for basically however long it takes for Apple to push an update out for macOS. I only restart that computer when an update comes through, because unlike a lot of Intel systems, and yes, Windows computers, you don't need to constantly restart your computer for the sake of stability. That Mac Mini just sits there waiting for me to pull something from my server or for my computers to run backups to it, and that is it. And that's kind of the beauty of having an operating system that has a Unix-like kernel, or a Unix kernel in general, is that the stability is fantastic. In the event that something goes wrong, the system will just restart. And if I need to restart it for any reason, I am restarting it. If I hit the shutdown button, that's my own fault. I wasn't paying attention close enough. So no, you don't have to worry about turning the server on because you had to update something or it crashed. It's just going to sit there running, and if something does go wrong, the default state of a hard crash is for the system to reboot. But that doesn't answer the question about what if you lose power. Well, first off, if you're running something that's mission critical like what I have, you want to have it on a UPS, because generally the biggest risk to a power out is actually damage to the hardware, not whether or not you're going to have to awkwardly pick your computer up to press the power button. So if you have a UPS, this isn't really going to be an issue to begin with. But let's say, for whatever reason, you don't have a UPS and the power goes out completely and the Mac shuts off. Well, guess what? Under the Energy tab in System Preferences for macOS, there is literally a toggle that tells the computer to start up automatically after power failure. So in the event that you don't have your system hooked up to a UPS and it just hard shuts down because you lose power, as soon as the power comes back on, everything's just going to fire right back up. And you even have options for wake for network access and things like that, so you can remotely access the machine. Like, my Mac Mini is running as a headless server, meaning that there are no keyboards, mice, or screens connected to it. It just sits over there as a little box with other hard drives sitting next to it, and that's it. So if this is how you have your computer set up, if you're smart about how you set your machine up, you will have to press the power button when you first turn the machine on. Like, this stuff is just so stupid to me. Like, when I saw that the power button was on the bottom, I considered that a footnote in an otherwise fantastic redesign. Like, they did so much cool stuff with this computer. They took a crazy powerful machine that's actually pretty good value, even at its base price, and packed it into a 5x5 box. Like, that's impressive. And then people are like, why didn't they put the power button dead center and make it look hideous? Why didn't they decide to, oh, I don't know, put the USB-Cs or the Ethernet or the power on the bottom, blah. Look, at the end of the day, how you use your computer is entirely personal to you. For me, I haven't shut off my Mac Mini in days. I haven't shut off my Mac Pro. I haven't shut off my Mac Studio in days. They all sit running nonstop because they don't draw a lot of power and they just do their job. That's all I care about. But if you are somebody who is concerned about that 5 to 7 watts that gets drawn at idle, yeah, if you shut your computer down, it's going to be a little awkward to just pick it up and press the power button and then use it for however many hours it's going to be on before you then shut it off and then use another half second of your time to turn it back on. Or like if you run it as a server and you just for some reason tell it not to turn back on after power goes out. Like, sure, it'll be awkward to slide the computer out, press the power button again, and slide it back into the rack because you didn't tell it to turn on after power goes out. But if that's the case, then that's your own fault because you literally were given a tool to not have this problem and then you chose to have this problem. Regardless, I don't care if the power button's on the bottom. I'm still debating on whether I'm going to buy one or not, but the fact that people are so obsessed with this power button being on the bottom of the machine when in reality turning a computer on takes like half a second. It's the same thing to me as people complaining about how moving from Touch ID to Face ID is so much slower because you have to look at your phone. Like, you're looking at your phone anyway. Shut up. I'm sorry, that's a little mean. It's just when I see things that, in my mind, seem like an otherwise solid design and there's like one thing that's a little odd and people focus only on that and not about the stuff that made it a good design, it just kind of irritates me. Either way, that's it. Let me know what you all think in the comments. Do you like where the power button is? Do you not care where the power button is? Do you hate it? Is it a deal breaker for you? If so, why? Or do you just hate Apple and hate me for talking about Apple? All those things, leave them in the comment section down below. And as always, if you like this video, definitely leave a like. If you want to see more content like this, go ahead and subscribe because I got some pretty fun stuff planned. Some more Mac Mini stuff, some more just general Apple stuff, as well as some Xbox stuff, and the list goes on and on and on. But either way, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Make sure to be there, and have a good one.